Hi, Caroline Tompkins here from FIT. Today's topic from our special advisor on international trade, Peter Hall, is about nearshoring. It seems everywhere we go these days, people are talking about nearshoring, basically outsourcing to a country that is close to you. Whether we're at a conference, we're at strategy sessions, policy discussions, or in news announcements, nearshoring is a really hot topic. And sometimes it's really hard to know what to think of it. Is it a new operating model or a passing fad? Should our company go all in or wait a while to see how it all shakes out? In his latest video, Peter Hall discusses the pros and cons of nearshoring and gives suggestions and possible approaches. Enjoy.
It seems everywhere there's business talk, nearshoring is one of the key topics. Whether in keynote presentations, strategy meetings, or sidebar conversations, there's lots of buzz. Well, small wonder. While serious talk of nearshoring is nothing new, springing to life with SARS-1, destructive weather and seismic events all over the world, and the global financial crisis of 2008, it really took the COVID-19 pandemic to kick it into tangible action. In investment speak, that's pretty recent. It takes time to actually get shovels in the ground, but that seems to be happening in spades in 2023. And what does this mean for exporting businesses in Canada? Well, many are welcoming this enthusiastically. They see new investments coming in with employment opportunities, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and of course, tax dollars to follow. And if they're not coming here, well, they're setting up shop in a friendlier location. Supply chains are more secure. Shipping will be more predictable and require shorter lead times. In short, it's much more about us, and it's keeping the so-called bad guys out. But is it all positive? Well, you'd be tempted to think so because the news usually stops here. Unfortunately, there are a good few things to watch out for. The first is higher costs. Let's face it, under globalization, business was organized internationally to minimize costs. Competitive pressures ensured that businesses would make cost-efficient decisions. It's logical then that unwinding this process will result in higher cost production. The timing is not great as we're already dealing with the first serious inflation outbreak in 31 years. Exporting businesses will have to factor this into their plans and will have to be creative to remain competitive. Well, a second issue is related. New domestic investments will require workers, and these, at least in Canada, the US, and Western Europe, well, they're in short supply. As such, these new operations will likely bid up the cost of labor, which no doubt will seep into our own organizations, magnifying wage pressures that are already present. Canada's acute shortage of skilled labor also suggests that new investments may well poach skilled labor from existing operations, compromising production from existing facilities and again adding to wage pressures for skilled workers overall. Now, sticking to the cost theme, a third issue is financing. The timing of new investment activity isn't great as it's clashing with the recent spike in interest rates. While we may welcome all of this new activity, the cost of what it produces will likely have to factor in increased borrowing costs. Location is a fourth key issue. You may be happy that a key part of your supply chain is moving closer, say from China to Mexico. Now, if you haven't dealt with Mexico-based businesses before, there's likely a lot to learn about transactional, taxation, and logistics issues, among a host of other things. And even if you are familiar with the new market, there may well be differences that relate to the nature of goods and/or services in question. With so much going on in a short time frame, there may well be opportunities to switch to new suppliers entering the domestic market space. A fifth consideration is to watch who you are dealing with. Nearshoring has created a wave of investments from offshore suppliers in an attempt to be treated as local content. China is particularly active, with anecdotal evidence suggesting strongly that it is investing in North America, especially Mexico, and in places like South Korea, which have preferential trade agreements with the United States. This new investment is generally being welcomed by the recipient jurisdictions. But if in US policymakers' eyes this is ultimately viewed as a violation of the spirit of nearshoring, then these investments and those supplied by them may well find themselves on the wrong side of Canada's top customer. Well, with this in mind, remember that USMCA is up for renewal in 2026. One last issue. It's critical to understand that these are political, not business decisions. Businesses make investment decisions based on long-term dynamics, given the amounts being committed and the need to generate shareholder value. Politics is often on a shorter horizon and can be fickle. When it finally dawns on consumers that they will ultimately pay the bill for this, in addition to current inflation pressures and higher interest rates, well, they may sour on nearshoring. At the same time, businesses need to be aware that higher cost repatriated investment means that there are still lower cost operations elsewhere that could well threaten future competitiveness. They too may lose enthusiasm for nearshoring. Best to keep an open mind and remain flexible. Here's the deal. Past promises to reshore, nearshore, or relocalize supply chains weren't honored for a reason. Businesses simply weren't convinced that the long-run costs of disruption justified a substantial reworking of their global production networks. Political pressure and security concerns have convinced many that it's time to make good on those promises. Whether or not the changes stick still remains to be seen. Where national security is concerned, nearshoring is likely here to stay. For the rest, time alone will tell. As nearshoring is essentially a policy in flux, it is critical to keep an eye on the progression of the issue in the coming months. Until next time, I'm Peter Hall.